Hey, Gretchen here from the Yoga Den, wanting to welcome you to spring. And I wanted to share a yin class that I taught with students this last weekend. And I had spring in mind and thinking about it not as a season but as a remembering. I'm going to share several sequences from the 60-minute course the 60-minute class that I taught, and then you can pause it, or at home you can lengthen the poses or the postures to 3 to 5 minutes, ideally for each posture that I'm going to share with you today. So what I really like to do in my yin classes, which I think of them as workshops, I get all my props ready. I've got blocks. I usually have a somatic ball. I've got bolsters at home. In the studio there aren't bolsters, and then I often use a blanket or I sit on a bolster to get into some of the poses. That it just allows me a little bit more space to get into the poses. I trained with Bernie Clark, and I use his book quite frequently during class too. I'll even open up a page and start reading from the text as we're going through postures. I like to think of it as an academic workshop in some ways. And so one of the things that makes yin a really wonderfully unique and beautiful practice to balance out our yang kind of days, our vinyasa classes, or our running, or our sports that we participate in, is the idea that we are slowing the body down, we're holding postures for a longer time, and we're finding stillness within the posture. And sometimes there's discomfort in a posture, but we find stillness anyway. And that's part of what yin is. So sometimes you might find a posture or a pose really annoying, or you might feel frustrated with your flexibility or with how much the pose is really annoying you. But that's a part of the yin journey. And so there's kind of 3 principles. You find your breath and you find stillness in the pose. You stay for a while and you take yourself to this edge where you can allow yourself to release and get into the fascia, into the ligaments, into the tendons, because that's really the goal, is to kind of positively stress those tendons and ligaments and our deeper tissues in the fascia, and allow for them to take up space, a little bit more space, and then allow for them to rebound. So let's go ahead and get started. So go ahead and get your props, whatever you have at home. So even if you don't have a bolster, you can roll up towels, you can roll up blankets, and those things work great for props. And I'll see you on the mat. Here we go. I like to start with, oftentimes with poetry or a quote to get us thinking about it. And Emerson is one of my favorite poets. The earth laughs in flowers. So the theme for the class: emerging slowly, trusting the timing, and softening in the growth that is spring. It's not a season, it's a remembering, a soft return to what has always been alive beneath the surface. All right, so in this first posture, we're going to go ahead and arrive, and we'll do that by going into a child's pose. So I'm going to show you quite a few variations of how you can get into child's pose today. And so one of the ways you can get into child's pose is, I'm sitting here on a pillow. You can take your bolster and you can set it right here underneath the chest. So just allow for the back to round. And so different than in a yang class where we're really kind of stretching and feeling the opening in the armpits, here we're kind of softening and surrendering into the pose. And so for this class today, we're going to hold child's pose for 5 minutes, but I'm just going to show you how to get into this pose in some variations here, and then I'll move on to the next pose. So here, one variation would be with the chin down. That would be one way to get into this posture if that feels good. Maybe even bringing a block underneath the forehead. That could be one way to approach child's pose today. And maybe you're feeling tight behind the knees, and so you could put the palms behind the knees and bring the head and forehead down towards the mat. You could also instead use a somatic ball, or again a blanket or a pillow right underneath the head, and just allow for the forehead to rest. Palms alongside, palms behind, palms in front. So that's our first posture of today, and that's child's pose. We arrive. You let the ground hold you, and nothing to change, nothing to push yet in this spring. Gentle breath awareness and inviting longer exhales. And you can hold that posture for 3 to 5 minutes. And then we'll be moving on from child's pose. We're going to transition into melting heart or puppy pose. And so from here, I have some extra padding under the knees today. So from here, you can start in your tabletop, fingers about hip distance apart, shoulder distance apart, knees about hip distance apart. Spread those fingers nice and wide, draw the core up and in, and start to walk the palms ahead of you until you feel comfort. The tailbone stays lifted, it comes towards the back of the space, and you just find and make space, creating space between the belly, the chest, and the armpits. You stay again in this posture for about 3 to 5 minutes. And so I'll show you one variation. Forehead is the variation, and the chin is another variation. So again, another way to approach this posture would be to bring the pillow or a bolster underneath the forearms and go ahead and draw the forehead down, creating a little bit of space for the forehead. And again here, it's up to kind of your body, but you really want to hold each posture between 3 to 5 minutes, maybe even longer. Now coming out of melting heart, you start to walk the palms back. I recommend kind of sitting up into hero's pose, maybe even doing a few cat-cows, something a little bit more yang-like with a little bit more fluid movement, and sometimes even lifting up into a downward dog in between our postures. All right, the next posture I wanted to share with you is thread the needle. These all go along with the upper body, the shoulder, and then we'll be moving down into dragon, into the lower body series. And so from here, we're going to come back into our tabletop, knees about hip distance apart. We're going to lift one palm up towards the sky, our gaze might follow, and then we bring that ear and that shoulder all the way down to the mat. Tailbone stays lifted, and I'm going to turn my face away from you here as the ear and the shoulder come all the way down to the mat. Now, this right palm, or this palm on the right side of the body, can either wrap all the way around the back, or it can come forward onto a bolster, or towards the front of the mat. Now you hold that side for 2 to 4 minutes, and then you take the opposite arm, do the same thing. You thread the needle through the shoulder and the ear, drop all the way down to the mat. You can close your eyes down, find some relief here, resting that shoulder on the mat. This palm can come all the way, it can wrap around, it can come forward, or it can stay right here. Lifting back up, settling in, coming back into child's pose for a rebound of 1 minute. Weight comes towards the heels. All right, so moving on from the upper body, we're going to transition into our dragon series. So I'm gonna move the pillow out of the way, always have props, always have a lot of information. So from here, I'm gonna face the camera here. So we're starting here in for our tabletop. I like to use a block for my dragon series, sometimes 2 blocks. So starting here, I'm gonna have the block on the outside of the right hand. I'm going to bring my left foot alongside of the pinky edge of my left hand. Palms right here in the middle, in the center, like tree trunks, holding and guiding me. Bringing in a nice deep breath in. And then as we lift up, lift the heart center up, and you might walk the toes forward, finding space in that front hip flexor. And so finding what feels good here. You can have one hand on the knee and one hand on a block. That is one iteration. You could have both hands on the floor and coming forward, allowing for that hip to come towards the mat. Maybe that causes too much discomfort. You could put a block underneath that leg. And here again, you hold this side for up to 4 minutes on the left side, and then you transition, coming back, maybe into child's pose or downward dog, and then we come over to the opposite side, same process. So first we come into our low dragon. And so our heart center stays lifted. Maybe this side you use the elbow, maybe this side feels a little bit more available. You start to walk the hands down, foot comes towards the front of the mat, and finding space here. Again, you can put a block under the thigh. You could use the palms so you can lift the heart center up, or you can come even lower. All right, so that's level 1 of the dragon. Spring asks for forward movement, but slowly with awareness. All right, we're gonna come back, bringing that big leg all the way back. Again, you can come into child's pose as a transition. You can lift the hips up into downward dog. And coming back down into an easy seat. All right, we're going to try I will show and cue the second part of the dragon pose, but I'm gonna turn all the way to the side. So here again, we walk the foot to the outer edge of the mat, creating space, creating an angle with the body, so a geometric angle with the body. Both arms are on the inside of that left foot. There's more space on the right. And here we're gonna come in for a gentle twist. So that right arm stays down on the floor, that left hand comes gently to the knee, and our gaze gently looks towards the back of the space, filling an opening in that right hip. And again, you stay on this side 2 to 4 minutes or longer, depending on how much time you have today. But in a 60-minute class, you would hold each side between 2 and 4 minutes. We're coming back, we're gonna straighten that leg out, lift the toes, hang the head, find the breath. Same thing on the opposite side, so I'll just cue it and show you some variations on this side. So walking the palms forward, letting the head hang heavy here. Maybe on this side you have more space. You can come all the way down. Maybe you stretch out even a little bit more. Right, and then another variation, if you wanted to continue on with the dragon series, is you come forward and you make more of a winged dragon. You roll onto the pinky edge of the left toes and you can lift the knee. This is much more active dragon. So that's another option on both sides. And then coming back into our hero's pose, we're gonna do a counter pose to that. So what I'd like to do now is something called half frog, which I would say is one of my favorite poses of all. And so we're gonna come down onto the belly. So this is a rebound pose. Coming all the way down onto the belly, nice and soft. You can engage those triceps if you'd like to here. And then you're just gonna bring the left knee up to parallel to the hip here. You're gonna make the pillow out of the hands. That right ear comes down to the right hand or the left hand that you've made a pillow out of, and you just find a softness here. Now perhaps you want a block under the knee to make it a little bit more of a twist or to lift the back. Or maybe you want to use a blanket or the ball under the knee. That might give you some comfort. And in this half frog, we stay here, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes on this side. And then you do the same thing on the opposite side. Now coming out of this, you gently draw the foot in. You lift up, find cobra. Inhale fully. Exhale, we come up through the center and we come back into our variation of child's pose. Elbows down, embryo pose, arms out. All right, I'm gonna show you our butterfly pose, and then I'm gonna show you our bananasana, and then we'll conclude. So now we're gonna come into either seated butterfly or supine. So I'm gonna show you both variations. So sitting up nice and tall, palms come towards the ankles. We really try to sit up tall at first, finding the breath, finding stillness. And this is a posture, but instead of if we were in a yang class or in a vinyasa flow, a gentle flowing class, we would really activate, really sitting up nice and tall. But the goal here is that we're gonna round over the belly. So again, I'm gonna show you a variation with the bolster. So here you might put the bolster right in the lap and just allow the head and the arms to gently rest over the legs. You'll notice that might press the legs out a little bit more. Too much sensation, you might not enjoy that sensation. So another option would be to bring the block in between the feet. And the head might work its way, not forcing the head down, but that might be another option. Another option might be to have a block underneath the knee. So just drawing one of the knees up if you're finding discomfort. So these are all variations. And in this posture, I recommend sitting in this posture for 3 to 5 minutes as well. And if that feels too intense, then you can always come down into the supine butterfly. And so I'll show you this variation. And so the hands might come to the belly and just allow for the knees to open up along the side. This really takes the pressure off the lower back. You don't really have to engage the core as much. So both of these variations are available. Then you close the knees together like bookends, draw the knees in, forehead towards the knees. Maybe sometimes a little bit more active, stretching the legs out in between the postures. And then we're gonna come into bananasana. before we come into our final Savasana. So in bananasana, another one of my most favorite postures, you come down in a supine position, you move the hips to the right of the mat, and you start to walk the feet to the left of the mat. And here you have some variations for the arms and variations for the feet. So the arms can be straight above you at an angle. So from above, you would look like a banana or a crescent moon. And you can take that right hand along the left wrist and really open up the right side body. You can bring that right foot on top of the left ankle, or another variation would be left ankle on top of right. So you listen to your body, what your body needs and wants in this sensation. So you hold this side, 3 to 5 minutes again. And then you're coming through the center and you just stay and you find stillness for a few moments. Exhale, we release, and then we move our hips over to the left side of the mat, walk the feet out, start to curve the feet, and then start to curve the upper body. Again, making a bind out of one hand around one wrist, opening up the left side body here, crossing one ankle over, and finding stillness. And maybe you'd hold that part for a minute, and then you might cue yourself, time yourself, and at a minute and a half or 2 minutes, you can switch the feet out. And then from here, really the most important is to find that integration. So between postures, you might come into your Savasana, and at the very end of class, I really might recommend Savasana. 3 to 5, maybe even 5 to 10 minutes, bring the feet out wide, bring the arms out to a T, palms open up wide, taking up so much space in the way that Yin is intended to be. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and read one of my favorite poems about spring. I wandered lonely as a cloud. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over hills and vales, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth to show me he had brought. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Have a wonderful day. From my heart to yours. Namaste. Thanks for joining me.